Okay, friends, we're back. We prayed morning prayer, and now it is time to jump into our continuous reading of Ecclesiasticus, the book of Sirach, and also known as the Wisdom of Ben Sira. We've done an introduction on this a couple days ago, and we're going to jump in and start reading here. And we're going to be in this first section here, chapter 1, which this puts as living by God's wisdom. And you see there's a quote there from Proverbs chapter 1, verse 7. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, deep reverence and awe. A moral mindset that submits to God's definition of right and wrong. Proverbs, by the way, has this wonderful image of God's wisdom being Lady Wisdom, chapter 8 of Proverbs. Lady Wisdom, which, if you look carefully at the text, is not a created being. Wisdom, part of God, from God, flowing from God. To fear the Lord is the fullness of wisdom. She fills you with good things. Indeed, God does. So, chapter 1, interestingly enough, one of the oddities about this book is chapter 1 is kind of a little bit more than chapter 1. We can see this by what you see on the screen. We have the Common English Bible on the left column that I'll be reading from. But we'll also have the new Revised Standard Updated Edition on the right column. I won't be reading that, but it's there in case you want to, kind of like check them both out as I'm reading. Interesting thing. So this big number like this, well, that's a chapter number. 0. 0? But this is chapter 1. Indeed, it is. One of the oddities of the book of Ecclesiasticus, aka Sirach, aka the Wisdom of Ben Sira, is that there is a formally recognized, making sure I get the wording right from my study Bible here. Yes, there's a formally recognized introduction called in my HarperCollins Study Bible NRSV, the prologue, and then chapter 1. So chapter 1 really is basically 2 chapters thrown together. Chapter 0, the prologue, and chapter 1. So let's read. I think that's probably enough to be said for now. Show this one last time, and then we need to get moving because I need to get moving. We're going to read for about 8 minutes. living by God's wisdom. Numerous and wonderful things have been given to us through the law, the prophets, and the other writings that followed them. For this reason, it is necessary to praise Israel for education and wisdom. It is also necessary not only for those who read them to gain understanding, but also for those who love learning to be of service to strangers when they speak and write. Because of this, my grandfather Jesus, who had devoted himself more and more to the reading of the law, the prophets, and the other ancestral scrolls, had gained enough experience with them and was himself led to compose a work dealing with education and wisdom. His goal was that lovers of learning who were committed to education and wisdom should gain much more by living according to the law. Let me just make one brief observation, friends. Verse 7, my grandfather Jesus. Remember, the name Jesus is actually a fairly common name. We forget that. Here's why we forget that. Because it's not common in that form. It's common in its Hebrew form, Yeshua. Yeshua, which can also be Joshua, as in Yeshua, the successor to Moses. Remember, apocryphal texts such as these are presented to us from Greek roots, not Hebrew roots. Verse 15. You are invited, therefore, to read with goodwill and attention, and to be forgiving in cases where we seem less than perfect in translating some expressions, despite working hard on the translation. What was originally expressed in Hebrew does not have the same power when translated into another language. Oh, absolutely. You always lose something in translation. By the way, that's why our Muslim neighbors, there is an absolute strict rule against in translating the Quran out of Arabic into any other language. As soon as it's translated, it's no longer an authorized text for instruction, for teaching. Yes, there are translations of the Quran, but they're not authoritative because you always lose something in translation. I actually really love how the Common English Bible puts that. Looking over here at how it is in the NRSV UE. Doesn't have the same effect. Well, yeah, of course. does not have the same power. That's something different, isn't it? That's something stronger. Verse 23, not only in this case, but even in the case of the law, the prophets, and the rest of the scrolls, there's no small difference between the translation and their expression in their own language. In the 38th year of the rule of King Euergetes, after I had arrived in Egypt and stayed a while, having found a copy of this scroll to contain no small amount of practical advice, I personally made it a high priority to apply speed and hard work to translating this very scroll. I worked skillfully and stayed up many nights to bring the scroll to completion in order to publish it for those living around who want to become well educated, preparing their character to live by the law. There's the end of the prologue. And now we actually jump into the text of chapter 1, living by God's wisdom. All wisdom comes from the Lord. It lives with him forever. Who can count the grains of sand in the seas, the drops of rain, or the days of eternity? Who can discover heaven's height, the earth's breadth, the abyss, or wisdom? Wisdom was created before everything else. Right understanding is as old as eternity. Remember, you lose something in translation. Remember, I've mentioned that the connection back to Proverbs. Proverbs is pretty clear in a way that makes verse 4 seem contradictory. Wisdom created before everything else? Well, before everything else is right. The created part, it's not really the language of Proverbs, which, by the way, is good reason why we read this for edification, but this isn't authoritative. What Ecclesiasticus has to say about wisdom isn't on the same level as what Proverbs has to say about wisdom. Let's just remember that. Get rid of this. Ah, interesting. We skipped verse 5. Okay. Not sure why, but that's okay. And it skipped in the NRSV as UE as well. Verse 6. To whom was wisdom's root revealed? Who knew her wonderful feats? There is one who is wise, greatly feared, seated upon his throne. The Lord himself created her. He saw her, he measured her. The Lord poured her out over everything he made, to be with each person to the extent that God grants, and he supplied her abundantly to those who love him. Again, wisdom. It's interesting to see how wisdom is spoken of here and remembering what Proverbs says. We're going to pause there. And next time, friends, that we pick up Ecclesiasticus, we'll resume at verse 11. Thank you for joining us this morning. Good morning once again, Mom and Anthony, and all others reading with us this morning. Have a blessed Sabbath, blessed Saturday. We'll pray again soon. Peace be with you all.